Welcome back. We're going to look through the papers now, and the Times leads with the government telling Thames Water bosses to clean up their own mess and not put the cost onto consumers, who now face bills increasing by 40% to avoid nationalisation.
The Guardian has the UN ordering Israel to unblock aid flowing into Gaza, the population facing starvation and famine.
The Mail leads with Angela Rayner under pressure to release details of her controversial property dealings and also facing allegations that she may have dodged tax.
Onto the Telegraph, the Prime Minister coming under fire by opposition parties for giving a knighthood in this strange honours list, which has come out of nowhere, really. Anyway, he's given a knighthood to a top Tory donor who gave him £5 million.
And the newspaper also leads with taxpayers potentially being forced to bail out Thames Water as customers face a 40% increase in bills.
All right, let's talk through some of those then with our senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and former government advisor, Claire Pearsall. Good to see you both this morning, Nigel. Let's kick off with Thames Water, shouldn't we? Because this is, frankly, whatever your political views or anything else, this is a disgrace.
Yes, it is. I mean, I think that the word that Michael Gove used, disgrace, and, you know, these fat cat water bosses who are making huge profits. Yes, absolutely. So the question is what the answer is to it. If the shareholders don't want to invest into the company,
which they don't.
So there's, £500 million that it needs desperately.
By Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. So it's unlikely to actually get there by that time. The taxpayers certainly shouldn't be picking up the tab for this. So the answer should be to nationalise it.
But forgive me, but doesn't that mean the taxpayer is picking up the tab?
Well, the taxpayer is picking up the tab for the company. They need to be compensated. But the whole point about nationalisation is then the taxpayer owns the company. So from then onwards, you would actually recoup your money.
Well, if it makes a profit.
Yeah, but that's the whole. That is the whole point about it. That if you, at the moment, profits are being taken out by shareholders. So they've been paid over the life of the company more than £4.6 billion. Now, if that £4.6 billion was invested in cleaner water, making the whole system more efficient, that would benefit both the consumer, but it would also benefit the government. I mean, I happen to think that all public services and utilities should be in public control, because why should people be making a profit out of it? But in this particular case, definitely.
Claire?
I think that Thames Water needs to just be allowed to go bust. I think it needs to be run by the administrators. I think that any of the shareholders need to lose their money, because this has been mismanagement at a woeful level.
All right, forgive me, because this is where we say things like this, and our guest earlier on was saying this. But what does that mean? If it goes bust, what happens to how it's managed? What happens to the customers? How does it work?
The customers will still receive water, so that isn't going to stop. The company of administrators will be appointed. They will take over the day-to-day running, so people won't see a difference in their supply. But it just means that the management are relieved of their duty, not that they've been doing a massively great job of it. And all those shareholders who have taken out millions will not get their investment back.
Right.
So I think that what the administrators will do will keep it running, keep everybody's taps going,
and try and sell it on. Sell it on for £1 or whatever.
Absolutely, to a company that's going to run it. Because I, unlike Nigel, I don't think that nationalising it is the answer. I really don't. I'm not convinced. Yeah, surprisingly. I'm not convinced the government does a better job of running it. I think that private investment is needed. I don't think that Thames Water have covered themselves in any glory. They have managed this so badly.
So what confuses me a little bit with you two, then, is that you're saying let the shareholders lose their money.
Yeah.
You're saying, in effect, with the nationalisation plan, you're saying protect the shareholders.
No, it doesn't protect them. I mean, that it is entirely up to the government how much compensation they pay the shareholders. They would certainly have to pay them something. What I'm saying is strip them of control of the company and allow us to actually run the company and benefit from it.
But as you say, you'd still ultimately ultimately, you're saying taxpayers' money would compensate to a greater or lesser degree would compensate the shareholders.
But the difference would be, rather than actually bailing them out, which is what they're asking for at the moment, the taxpayer would own the company, would be investing in the company, and would gain any profits the company made.
But it's almost as if you're rewarding those shareholders for the mismanagement of Thames Water. You would almost be saving them and saying, well, we don't want you, but here's your money back, off you go. Whereas I want to punish them for not doing a good job.
But your system sends it back into the private sector.
For somebody to manage it a hell of a lot better, yes.
Or worse. I mean, that's the whole point, that
I'm not sure it could
if the
be
public
worse.
has a stake in the company, is it not better overall, both for the company and for the public, where you take the profit motive out of it?
But oh, come on, nationalisation has not got a great track record.
It doesn't.
No, it hasn't. But that was a long time ago. I mean, it was Margaret Thatcher who privatised everything, and we are going back, 30-odd years. So everyone sort of talks about how awful British Rail was. I'm not sure it was, but everything has changed so much in that time. So if you were nationalising things, you'd do it in a different way, a more modern way.
But it still doesn't. If you're bringing it into nationalised sort of government control, that means that the government will have to invest. Now, everybody in government and also in the Labour Party who are looking to become government are saying there's no money. So what will happen if the government takes it over? Where is the investment coming from to make this company work? Because if you're just looking at this is taxpayers' money, and you are suggesting that taxpayers are going to have to fork out more money for a failing water company.
But the whole point is that you've got to actually invest. They're talking about growth, economic growth at the moment. We invest in economic growth.
But why don't we let some private company invest in economic growth rather than the taxpayer?
Well, I mean, if you can find that private company, I mean, the stages would be the administration, and then when that didn't work, you nationalise it. As I say, I'd just cut out the middleman and do the nationalisation. But the idea that people own public services which they use is right in principle, and you take the profit motive out of it. So what money you put up, you're investing in that industry.
Well, let us know what you think. GBNews at gbnews.com.
It's an interesting
I'd love to
one.
be a fly on the wall at your dining room table, you two. This is what most people what it's like at home all the time.
I don't know about you, but what I'm left with that is not knowing. Because they both make very good arguments. If I had to vote on which side to vote to go with on that plan for Thames Water, I wouldn't quite know.
No. And you're divided on the views as well, so do keep them coming in. Claire, let's have a look at the Mail, shall we? And this is the UN. It's been accused of double standards after it's urged the government to abandon the Rwanda asylum scheme.
Yeah, now this is quite interesting, and I think people are pointing at the UN and saying, well, this is hypocrisy writ large if you're suggesting the United Kingdom can't make a plan with Rwanda, but you're sending people there. But when you delve down into the detail of it, what the UN does, well, what it has done is sent people, the most vulnerable refugees from Libya, over to Rwanda, and this has been on an emergency basis. It is also temporary. They're not there for the rest of their days, and it is voluntary. So I think there's been sort of just under 2,000, I think 1,700 in total, I think 400 or so in the last year. So this is not quite at the same scale as what the UK wants to do. It is also not really comparable. This is emergency measures to get people out of danger, putting them there with the view of moving them somewhere else. So it's not the same at all. But I think it's going to put in people's minds that the UN shouldn't have a view on United Kingdom policy, which is a valid point. And I think it's worth having a look at how many people can have a say in what we do as a country, but it isn't quite as it's being sold.
Oh, right. Well, that's interesting coming from your perspective on that one. Nigel, I want to look at the front of the Mail. Angela Rayner, Deputy Leader of the Labour Party under more pressure.
Yes, I think that this shows the sheer desperation of the Tories to start making waves on this one. I mean, they've now reported it to the police to see if the police will reconsider launching an investigation into her.
They have said they will reconsider
They've
it.
said that, yes, but it's based on a Tory complaint. I mean, the complaint's gone in from a Conservative MP, so the police have to now reconsider whether they'll investigate. Whether they will or not, they may say, look, this is not one for us. I can't understand why, if there is any problem around this, why HMRC aren't doing the investigation. They're the ones who would have lost money out of it, and it's unusual for the police to get involved in a thing like this.
But why is it then that Keir Starmer... See, I'm intrigued by Keir Starmer, who knows all this sort of stuff, right? And he said, well, I haven't looked at the details.
Yeah.
But why... is that because then he can say, well, I haven't seen anything wrong? Is he trying to deliberately distance himself?
No, I think the point that Keir Starmer made yesterday was that his own team has had a look at this legal advice that Angela Rayner's received. Angela Rayner's team have gone through it. Both teams are satisfied that the advice is valid. On the basis of that, Keir Starmer is saying, look, I don't have to see all these personal details. I'm the leader. I'm happy to trust my teams to say everything's OK.
But is there a sense of... And I don't know, because I clearly haven't seen anything of it, and we don't know what Angela Rayner's done or hasn't done. But when people say, well, we've seen the advice and it looks like it's OK, sounds like it's not perhaps as totally clear-cut as you'd want it to be. So at what point like with the expenses scandal, when people said, and in fact David Cameron insisted on it, saying, well, you haven't actually done anything wrong, you haven't actually broken the rules, but you need to give the money back anyway. So wouldn't that clear this up?
Well, I mean, if she hasn't broken any rules...
Yes, but if they're not...
You wouldn't expect to give her the money back.
Yes, but if they're saying it's the fact that it's a bit more nuanced than that, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's the case with everything is always the cover-up, and it's all this sort of denial, and my team has seen it, and Starmer's team has seen it, but we're not going to show anybody else, and we're not going to tell you what it is we've seen either. Well, I mean, that could be a piece of paper.
Personal details that go back 15 years. I mean, what Starmer and Angela Rayner have agreed to do is to publish their tax returns, which is absolutely right. What we're talking about here are personal details about tax affairs rather than tax returns, going back to the time when she was married. Or her own personal life would obviously come into that. I can understand why she's saying, well, hang on, I'm not prepared to just open up every personal detail about my life for everybody.
But in order to stop the scrutiny and the questioning in an election year, would that not be the best thing for her to do?
Yeah.
If she hasn't done anything wrong?
Well, I mean, she's arguing that if all the Tories open up their tax affairs, she's happy to show hers.
Yeah, but it's this odd situation of sort of saying there was a house that she was living in, but it wasn't the same house as her husband and child were living in, but they weren't separated at that time.
Yeah, I mean...
that's a bit odd.
Well, it certainly is odd, and I would imagine that whatever the personal details are around that is the bit that Angela Rayner is not very keen on sharing, which I can understand, also for the privacy of the other people involved. The issue here really is whether or not she owes £3,000 in capital gains tax or not, which should be a job for HMRC. It's
easy just to pay it, wouldn't she?
Well, I think it should have been paid. It would have shown the right attitude.
But she doesn't know it.
But you don't know that.
No, I don't know that.
Right,
you
two.
All right. Honestly, we're having a
Nigel.
domestic now.
We're out of
See you
time.
later.
Here's the weather.